Hi, and welcome to my second ever vlog. This isn't actually a vlog. This is like a real legit video. I wanted to talk about books today because books and reading is it's something I really enjoy doing, something I do a lot of. And this year I read 58 books, which was over my I was trying to get 52, so about a book a week. So 58 was like pleasantly over my goal. I am close to getting to 60. It's the 28th of December right now when I'm filming this, and I'll probably get to 60, but I just wanted to get this video out there before the new year. And yeah, so what I wanted to do with this video is just share with you my favorite books that I've read this year. And I'm going to share with you my 10 favorites. I've broken everything down into different categories too. I tend to read broadly, so I read fiction, I read autobiographies, I read nonfiction, particularly in like health, wellness, personal development, those different areas. So I'm going to talk about all those different categories and which books that were my favorite. If you want to check out my page on Goodreads, you can be my friend. We can be book friends in 2018. That will be really fun. And I'm going to leave the link below for that in the description bar. I'll also leave the link to the list of books that I read in 2017 if you want to see like the complete list, because again, these are just my 10 favorite selections. For the most part, I read books on the Kindle or I get them from the library. So I don't actually have like hard copies to show you for most of these. So what I'll do is I'll just show you an image on the screen of the book, and hopefully that'll give you the visual. But anyway, the first category that I wanted to talk about is personal development. And I read a lot of personal development books that I really liked this year, but two that stood out to me in particular. One of them is Deep Work by Cal Newport. Deep Work is a really intense book. It's really long. I listened to it on Audible, and it's really detailed. It's got lots of research. The whole premise of Deep Work is basically talking about why it's so important to have like blocks of uninterrupted, focused attention when you're doing work. And there's a lot more to it than that, but I just found it to be it really like changed the way I thought about work this year. And it really helped me focus on tasks and like block, 1, 2, 3 hour sessions of work instead of doing that kind of like multitask thing that people tend to do. Great read. The other one is this is a lesser known one, and this one had a really big impact on my year, so I wanted to bring it up. It's The 5 a.m. Miracle by Jeff Sanders. And this is a really easy book. It was really fast to read. It's pretty short, but that's what I like about it. It was really organized, and it helped give me a template of planning like my days, my weeks, my months, my like life goals and everything like that. And it's a really effective template. I like it better in some ways than David Allen's Getting Things Done, GTD, which is kind of like a system I've used off and on for many years. This is just simpler and straightforward, and it's been working really well for me. And don't let the title throw you off. You don't have to wake up at 5 a.m. It's not about necessarily waking up early. So I want to talk about contemporary fiction now. I didn't really read a lot of classics this year, so normally I would include like classics and contemporary fiction, but I'm just going to share with you two contemporary favorites that I really liked. Number one, this might seem like a cliche book, but Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. Gillian, not Gillian. I saw it as a movie a while ago and it was pretty good, but I didn't really think that I would care about the book too much. I'm not normally into like those intense like suspense novels, but it's just like, it's a great book. It's so gripping, and it really gets into the heads of people. One thing that I like my fiction to have are really great characters who are also, human beings. So they have flaws and shortcomings, and you definitely see like some very realistic personality depictions of someone who's like very twisted. I really recommended it. It was dark, but it was good. The other contemporary fiction book that blew my mind this year was called The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. And apparently everyone else in the world has read this, and I was just the last one to the party. And there's a movie that's apparently really good too, and I didn't know that. I'm not like a big movie person. This book, if I could like sum it up really simply, it's basically like a British butler goes on a road trip in like the 40s or 50s. It was somewhere in there. And it like the whole book takes place over like a span of a few days road trip. But it's this butler's recollections of his life as a butler. And I know that sounds like super boring, but if you are like into character-driven novels, it's short, but it's just like this perfect little character study capsule. And it's not about like big plot points or things happening, but it's about how this one person just misses so much in his life because he's so fixated on his work. And yeah, it was a great read. It like really, it really stuck with me. And that's how I can tell if a book's my favorite at the end of the year, if it's something that I'm still thinking about and still remembering. I wanted to give a shout out to a series this time. I usually read like a book series every year or so. I actually tried reading Outlander this year and I just couldn't get into it. I couldn't get past the first book. It just wasn't my thing. Tell me if I'm wrong and if it gets really good, if maybe the first book's just kind of slow. But it kind of just like, well, I listened to it on Audible, and every time I was listening to it, Michael would come home and be like, "Are you listening to that Scottish porn again?" There's just like so much, it's just so romancy and stuff, and that's not really usually what I'm into. But again, tell me if I'm super wrong and if Outlander's actually really good. Because yeah, I kind of dropped that one by the wayside. But I did read a series that I finished the whole thing of, and that was the Dark Tower series. And people have been recommending to me to read the Dark Tower series since like I was a teenager, and I finally did it. Actually, you might be able to see them behind me on the shelf. Michael has like the whole collection of them, which is part of the reason I decided to read it, because the books were just there on the shelf. So it was like, well, that's easy. I don't have to go to the library. So yeah, the Dark Tower series, I totally get why people are into it. It has its flaws. It's not like a perfect series, but it's really fast paced. The characters are super lovable. It gets pretty deep. Stephen King has like some pretty profound twists and, you know, life commentary in there too. But mostly it's just like, they're just fun. They're like action, adventure, fantasy books. They're super fun to read. Now in the health and wellness category, I have two. And again, I read a lot in this category that I enjoyed, so it was kind of hard to narrow it down. But again, these are the ones that stuck with me. So number one was Proteinholic by Garth Davis. Now I saw some YouTube clips and stuff of Garth Davis, and I kind of liked him because he's kind of an asshole. Like he's kind of a, I mean that in a good way. Like he's really confrontational. He's like no nonsense. I kind of just like, I liked him and I was curious about what kind of book he wrote. And it turns out that Proteinholic is just a really coherent, well-researched book about our culture's obsession with protein as a nutrient. Because if you think about it, our culture tends to like hate on carbs or hate on fat, but our culture's pretty much never hated on protein. Protein is like this like esteemed nutrient. And this book talks about why that is and why that's not necessarily like a great thing, why we don't need like epic amounts of protein that people seem to think we need. So it was a great book. The other one in this category is called Finding Ultra by Rich Roll. And I listened to this as an audiobook. I really recommend doing the same because Rich Roll, I like him narrating his own story. It's basically his journey from being an alcoholic lawyer to becoming an Ultraman, to doing, what did he call it, like the Big Five? Basically like 5 Ultraman marathons, which is like a triathlon, I'm not good at remembering this, the swimming thing, but yeah, a triathlon is like biking, swimming, and running. And yeah, basically the culmination of the book is how he did 5 of those in a row, essentially in 7 days on 5 different islands in Hawaii with one of his friends. And it's just a great book. I found it super inspiring. Rich Roll is like really hardcore, but he doesn't like hold back when he tells his story. You get to really hear the ups and downs. And it almost read like fiction. It was so enjoyable and so engaging. Kind of along the same lines, I like to read autobiographies. And that one, Rich Roll's, was kind of like an autobiography a little bit, but it was more about like his training and stuff like that. So I've read a lot of autobiographies this year. I really like reading them when I go on long drives, listening to them. So I've listened to Amy Schumer's, I've listened to, who else? Amy Schumer, Amy Poehler, Lauren Graham's Talking as Fast as I Can. I've read one by Chelsea Handler. But my favorite one, and I feel bad because it's like the only male one I read. I do love the, you know, the women ones that I read. All of those are great. But there was something special about Neil Patrick Harris's Choose Your Own Autobiography. It was just so cute. I mean, Neil Patrick Harris is very lovable, obviously. But the way he wrote this autobiography book was like a choose your own adventure book. So there would be like random points in time where he would just kill himself off. You know, he would just kind of like be telling the truth, really heartfelt stories about his life. And then all of a sudden he'd get into this like catastrophic accident and die. And he just kind of like, I don't know, it just made it like really fun and kind of random and quirky to listen to. I read a great nonfiction book this year called, I told everyone about this too, and they all kind of acted like I was crazy when I said I love this book. But it was called Get Well Soon by Jennifer Wright. This is a book about plagues, and who would have thought that a book about plagues would be so much fun, but it was. I love Jennifer Wright, and I love how she was able to tell the story of, you know, the great plagues of the world, like everything from bubonic plague to Spanish flu, to AIDS even on the last chapter. How she was able to tell these stories and make them seem like stories. This is one of the only like nonfiction books that I feel like I genuinely, this sounds wrong, like I genuinely learned something from this book because it was just so enjoyable. And I listened to it as an audiobook. It was really easy, really engaging. She talks about the people in history involved in these plagues as though they're characters in a fictional novel. In the way that they're fleshed out. It's not just like a nonfiction book of facts. So if you're ever curious about the various plagues of the world, it's a great book. And finally, I do have a spiritual pick for you. I read books, I kind of go through phases with spiritual books. One that I recently enjoyed a lot is called Mindfulness in Plain English by, I'm gonna mispronounce this terribly, Hinapola Gunaratana. I tried, I'm so sorry. Anyway, Mindfulness in Plain English. This book was a great guide to Vipassana meditation. Meditation can be kind of a confusing subject because there's so many different variants of it. There's so many different ways to do it. There's so many schools of thought. So Vipassana meditation is probably like the most basic, well-known type meditation because it's essentially mindfulness. It's basically the kind of meditation where you focus on your breath and that's it. It's not like anything related to visualization or anything like that. I found this guide to be really clear, like the title, Mindfulness in Plain English. Now that doesn't make this subject really challenging. Like mindfulness meditation is super, super tough and I suck at it, and that's something that I want to improve on in 2018. But if you're looking for like, if this is kind of up your alley, this I think would be like a great starting point. It really was for me anyway. And those are my 10 favorite books of the year. Hopefully you enjoyed this discussion, and I would love if you shared your own favorites as well. If you're into reading, if this is something you like to do, and definitely go be my friend on Goodreads because I like, I've met quite a few people through PianoTV, internet met people from PianoTV over on Goodreads. And yeah, it's lots of fun to pick a book or put a book on my shelf and then see like what other people have already rated it and stuff like that. So definitely come hang out over there, and I will catch you in the next one.